If you're Russian, you won't have many reasons to be proud. Maybe just the achievements in space from 60 years ago, victory in a war from 80 years ago, literature from 100 years ago, and even then, those are the accomplishments of all the peoples living in the prison of nations, not just the Russians.
Oh, you rascal, you bandit. But this is all mine.
All yours?
No, of course, the Vatniks can still get a significant rush of endorphins from having their dwarf master manipulator, who's been clinging to his Kremlin stool with his teeth for 20 long years.
Putin is the president of the world. Hooray!
And that's basically it. That's precisely why the Russian mind is constantly coming up with new and compelling reasons to feel immensely proud of their historically backward homeland. It's no big deal that you live in an old shack with a shabby carpet on the wall, work your tail off for 20,000 rubles a month, get treated in a crumbling clinic, and eat expired food.
The whole country here eats expired food, from the store to the market. And all the pensioners go to the market just for these products. I'm a labor veteran, and my pension is 14,600. Shame on our government.
But just look at Russia's weaponry. The best in the world. There's nothing like it anywhere else. Russian weapons makers are ahead of the whole world. You could drown in pride. Russia has the best assault rifle, the best tank, the best missile, the best airplane. It's just that most, if not all, of the most iconic examples of our weaponry were simply stolen from more developed and civilized Western countries.
How can you not be ashamed, young lady?
Recently, they celebrated the anniversary of the creation of the Kalashnikov rifle in the swamps. Supposedly, 75 years ago, the brilliant Russian engineer Misha Kalashnikov was sitting under a tree. An apple fell on his head, and he came up with a miracle weapon.
Mikhail Kalashnikov's invention brought him fame, but it didn't bring him wealth. But he was very proud that he was awarded the highest state honors and even had a monument erected in his homeland while he was still alive.
We didn't exaggerate much, because the creation of the Kalashnikov rifle was completely mythologized in the Soviet Union. Once upon a time, there was a guy from the Altai region who didn't have any special technical education. All his attempts to create his own weapons prototypes failed. And then suddenly, bingo. He creates the best assault rifle in the world at that time.
I personally witnessed American soldiers throwing away their standard-issue M16 rifles and deliberately picking up the Soviet-made AK-47 assault rifle.
According to legend, Kalashnikov began developing his rifle in 1943. And this is where the strange coincidences start. It was in 1943 that samples of the legendary German assault rifle by Hugo Schmeisser fell into the hands of the Soviet military.
Coincidence? I don't think so.
But until the end of the war, Soviet engineers, including the brilliant Kalashnikov, still couldn't create anything similar, even with the original in their hands. No matter how hard they tried, they still ended up with a PPSH.
The design is so simple that it practically needs no explanation. It's just two ordinary aluminum spoons and a clothespin, which is attached to these spoons, or the spoons are attached to the clothespin.
And only 2 years after Germany's surrender did mass production of Kalashnikovs begin in DECIEVED. Interestingly, before that, in 1946, a group of German gunsmiths led by Hugo Schmeisser himself, the creator of the very same STG-44, was relocated to DECIEVED. This was standard practice, as after the war the Soviet Union would take equipment, technology, and scientists from Germany. And so, after the Germans had worked at the DECIEVED factory for a year, Misha Kalashnikov just happened to invent his own assault rifle, which looked a lot like the Schmeisser, and which they started producing right there in DECIEVED.
That's just plain robbery or theft. What else can you call it? It's absolute lawlessness.
And in fact, Mikhail Kalashnikov himself was actually somewhere else, working on his stick shooter near Moscow. He only came to DECIEVED for the launch of mass production in '47. The conclusion is simple. If the Kalashnikov rifle looks like a Schmeisser and was assembled at the factory where Schmeisser worked, then it's a Schmeisser.
I started to get suspicious.
According to historian Boris Sokolov, whenever any foreign expert on the history of firearms hears the name Mikhail Kalashnikov mentioned as the creator of an original assault rifle, it brings a good-natured smile to their face.
The Schmeisser Design Bureau worked here in our city of Izhevsk from 46 to 52. That's it. Somehow, I doubt that the design of the rifle, which was basically a modernization of their product, happened without their involvement. It's really hard for me to believe that.
And the cherry on top of this expose was, in fact, the monument to Mikhail Kalashnikov that was erected in the center of Moscow. It caused a real scandal because on the monument to the creator of the Kalashnikov rifle, the schematic of that very German STG-44 was immortalized. Apparently, the sculptor wasn't let in on the nuances of the official mythology and, out of the goodness of his heart, sculpted the truth on the monument.
It's hard to imagine what the consequences of this might be.
Another legendary thing that still makes the Z-Patriots' palms sweat is the T-34 tank. The Victory Tank. The best tank of World War II. According to the Soviet version, of course, the fact that the tankers themselves affectionately called it a crematorium because the tank had very thin armor and its fuel tank was located right next to the crew is something Soviet worshippers prefer not to mention, just like the fact that their sacred armored vehicle was created with the help of the Americans.
American shenanigans. Americans, why did you flood us?
Oh, come on. An important fact. The legendary 34 that everyone knows is the T-34-85 model. That's the very tank you see mounted on pedestals in cities and towns. This tank only entered service at the end of the war in 1944. But from 41, the Soviet Union fought with the T-34-76. That was a completely different machine, truly developed in the USSR. And that says it all. This tank had a whole bunch of engineering and manufacturing flaws. The world's best tank had no ventilation, so after a few shots the loader would pass out from the gunpowder fumes, and visibility inside the tank became about as good as in a black hole. In the first version of the T-34, there was no rotating base, so when the turret turned, the loader had to run around inside the tank, chasing the turret along the ammo racks. It's hard to even imagine that. So let's not fry our brains over it. Most T-34s didn't have radios, so during battle, the crew had to shout to each other through the hatch. The gearbox wasn't synchronized with the drive shaft, so you had to use a sledgehammer to change gears. One of the primary and most significant drawbacks was the extremely poor visibility from the tank's cramped turret. Break time equals 0.5 s/. The crew honestly had absolutely no clear clue what was truly going on around them at any given moment. There's a recorded case where, during the Battle of Prokhorovka, a single German tank drove into a cluster of Soviet tanks, destroyed 14 of them, and still went unnoticed.
And who, in fact, did that?
In 2 years of war, Soviet engineers still couldn't manage to change or improve anything. The T-34 still remained an outdated and unreliable machine. That's why the proud Soviet government, out of desperation, asked the US for help in modernizing the tank. In December 1941, the T-34 was handed over to the Americans for comprehensive testing and to develop recommendations for improvement. The Americans took a look at this technological marvel and were stunned. How is it even possible to fight in this tin can? Tests showed that the T-34 medium tank completely breaks down after just 343 kilometers and cannot be repaired any further. The T-34's hull is so poorly sealed against water that during heavy rains, the tank gets flooded.
That hole will flood us, and that's it.
The welding of the T-34's armor plates is rough and sloppy. All of the tank's mechanisms require way too many adjustments and fine-tuning. The transmission, in particular, deeply impressed the American specialists. It turned out that it was copied exactly from an outdated American design developed back in the 1920s. There's even a direct quote from the truly stunned Yankees. "We firmly believe that the Russian designer who put such a difficult transmission in a tank showed inhuman cruelty toward the poor drivers." That's the Soviet Union for you, baby.
You filthy bastards. What the hell are you doing? You animals.
And you have to keep in mind, the Americans weren't given just any tank off the assembly line, but a specially assembled model for testing. A Benchmark 1.
I'll just give a round of applause.
Pretty much everything in the tank had to be replaced. The Americans suggested a deep modernization of the T-34 and shared a whole bunch of their own technologies with the USSR. In the end, it was thanks to American engineers and scientific developments that the legendary T-34-85 came to be, the very tank of victory. But that was only half the job. The improved machine still had to be put into mass production and assembled with quality. And when it came to that, the Soviets didn't just have a problem, they had a disaster. The level of production was incredibly low due to technological backwardness. For example, out of 1,100,000 artillery shell casings produced, 960,000 were defective. That's more than 86%.
Now I indeed understand why you are crying at this moment.
To assemble the modernized T-34s, the US had to supply the Soviet Union with quality materials and, most importantly, machine tools through Lend-Lease. So it turns out that the legendary T-34 was developed thanks to the Americans, made from American parts, and produced on American equipment. So the states should be proud of their victory tank.
Best job in the world. Best job in the world.
And of course, how could we forget the atomic bomb? The Russians loved it even more than vodka and domestic violence. For Russians, nuclear weapons are a symbol of their greatness and their greatest source of pride. They literally worship the phallic symbol of the missile and as a nation dream of a nuclear apocalypse.
The whole world in ashes, but not just yet.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
We'll blow it up. We definitely will.
But how did a country that couldn't invent a rifle or a tank on its own manage to create a nuclear bomb? They didn't. That's how. They just stole the nuke from the Americans.
Everything I've worked so hard for, it'll all be lost.
In the 1940s, the Soviet Union shut down all nuclear physics research because they considered it pointless. Oh, those far-sighted Soviet scientists. However, after the US dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Stalin practically swallowed his own mustache out of envy. In the Kremlin, they became obsessed with dreams of having their own nuclear club. But by that time, Soviet science had already fallen hopelessly behind, so the Soviets focused not on research, but on espionage. You could easily call Oppenheimer the father of the Soviet atomic bomb, and Theodore Hall its godfather. It was Hall who passed secret information about the latest plutonium bomb developments to the communists.
Oh, you.
Hall studied at Harvard and was a committed Marxist. By a stroke of luck, he became one of only a few dozen people in the world who knew about the Manhattan Project. That was the code name for the project to develop the American atomic bomb.
Now that's some serious luck. That's what I'm talking about.
Besides Hall, the Rosenberg family also worked for the Soviets. They handed over to the USSR the working blueprints of the bomb dropped on Nagasaki, along with a 12-page report on their work. All Soviet scientists had to do was copy it. Though, to be fair, even that took them 4 years. In 1950, the FBI uncovered the spy network, but it was already too late. The Rosenbergs were arrested and executed. This is the only case in US history where someone was executed for espionage.
The guy was on his way to success. Unlucky.
That's just Russian weapons pride for you, indeed. It's all built on other people's achievements and technologies. That's why every Russian should remember, if there's something to be proud of in Russia, most likely it was stolen from the West.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.